Good afternoon, everybody. Please feel free to take a seat. And thanks for choosing to spend your last hours of this year's World Water Week with us here talking about water and climate. This title of the session today is From COP28 to COP29, Building Progress for Water and Climate Action. We are pleased to welcome you on behalf of the co-organizers, CIWI, the UAE COP28 Presidency team, the Azerbaijan COP29 Presidency team, and the Azerbaijan State Water Agency. My name is Dani Gayar-Pichet. I lead our international policy work at CIWI. And also that incorporates the work that we do around the Water for Climate Pavilion, which is now 78 members strong and works from one COP to the next to create continuity between the discussions in the climate space. We are going to start by looking back at the success of COP28. And for that, I have the honor of welcoming Ms. Shaima Gargash, who is Director of Energy and Sustainability Affairs for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the United Arab Emirates. And please feel free to come on stage to introduce the session.
Okay, can everyone hear? First of all, thank you so much for waiting, and apologies for being late. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and dear friends, good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and I would like to first start by congratulating CIWI for putting this session together to underscore the importance of continuing to elevate water within the climate agenda and ensuring continuity and synergies between COPs. To us, as COP28 Presidency, this session reassures us that all the work that we have done with our partners is being carried on, and that COP28 was not an end, but a start. Because water is the primary medium through which most people experience climate change, we ensured that water is a key pillar in the COP28 action agenda. And coming after COP27, which, as we all know, was the first COP to reference water in the cover decision. And COP26, the first COP to have a water pavilion. Overall objective was to continue elevating and heightening the visibility of water, positioning it as a critical enabler for climate change. And of course, we know COP29 will also continue taking the water agenda forward. Before diving into the specific outcomes and initiatives, I would like to give an overview of the process and approach. And first, we were lucky to be preceded by the UN 2023 Water Conference, which was truly a landmark moment for water in the global agenda. And recognizing the importance of creating synergies between key global milestones, the COP28 Presidency established a partnership with Tajikistan and Netherlands to serve as the COP28 water champions and to ensure that progress and commitments are taking forward. We were also very keen to design the COP28 water agenda together, jointly with partners. So since the UN 2023 Water Conference, the team engaged in an extensive consultation process involving 100 stakeholders from the water and climate community, many of whom are here in this room. Our consultation process was driven by a few guiding principles. Conscious of the wide number and range of initiatives that exist, particularly given the Water Action Agenda, born out of the UN 2023 Water Conference, we prioritized looking for existing initiatives to build on and scale up versus creating new initiatives. Additionally, since COP28 is a moment and should not be seen as an end, we were adamant about driving outcomes that have external owners or lead partners to ensure that activities are taken forward after COP. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, when designing our agenda, it was critical to position water as a standalone pillar, but also given its cross-cutting nature to integrate water across the full agenda and other sectors, including food systems, nature, and multi-level action. Through the consultation process and given these guiding principles, we identified 3 key priorities for the water agenda at COP28 and announced exactly a year ago here at World Water Week. At COP28, we led 3 main outcomes, which we are all excited to learn about and understand the progress made in the upcoming segment. So we'll keep it brief now. Protecting and restoring freshwater ecosystems, where we scaled up the Freshwater Challenge and worked with the core partners to expand the number of country members to over 40 countries, announced at a ministerial at COP28. Building water resilience food systems, where we fed the first ever COP ministerial dialogue on the water-food nexus, co-convened by the UAE and Brazil, and launched a partnership to support with integrated water and food systems management housed within the UNFCCC, Climate Resilience Food Systems Alliance. And the third is accelerating urban water resilience, where we platformed the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative, launched a working group under the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda, and held a high-level roundtable on urban water resilience. And through the broader programming, we also shed light on other critical topics that relate to the water-climate nexus, including scaling up water finance, the water-energy nexus, and water peace and security. We are very pleased to see that the COP29 Presidency, as mentioned, is building on this, and that water is featured as a key part of their agenda. And we look forward to hearing more about their plans today. And to conclude, and on a more forward-looking note, I would like to say that our efforts at COP29 were just the start. The UAE is excited to continue elevating water in the global agenda and humbled to be the expected co-host of the UN 2026 Water Conference, alongside our colleagues from Senegal. Similar to COP28, where nothing would have been possible without the support of all partners, we are continuing on all members of the international community to land a conference that truly moves the needle on the global water agenda. Thank you, and we look forward to continuing our work together.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And what we're going to do now is to dive into some of those initiatives that Shaima explained. So to do that, I'm definitely going to introduce our panelists and invite them to come share with us. Christine Colvin, who is the water policy lead at WWF, is going to tell us a little bit about the Freshwater Challenge. We have Helen Njoki Wanjoy Opil, who is representing Urban Resilience and Water Africa lead at Cities R2R. Please take a seat, and from the Climate Champions team, and she will be explaining a little bit about accelerating the urban water resilience. And last but not least, everyone knows Ingrid Timbo, who is Senior Policy Lead and Deputy Executive Director at Agua, and who is also UAE COP28 Senior Water Specialist. So I'm actually going to start with Ingrid to sort of situate overall in COP28. What did you feel we accomplished as a community within the climate space, and what's the potential for moving forward?
Sure. Thanks, Danny, and thanks, Siwi, for hosting this event to follow up on all of the work that we did. As Shaima outlined for you, there was a lot going on around water at COP28 last year, and that was just kind of the presidency event. So we had 10 events plus a World Leaders Summit event. We had, additional interventions on other days. One of the main things, and if you were at the event that we did last year, kind of talking about our plans for COP28, my biggest thing coming into that role was really mainstreaming water across the entire agenda for the 2 weeks, so that we weren't just kind of stuck in our water bubble on Water Day. And we're very glad that there was a Water Day, and obviously the linkages with food systems as well, because they're so critical and they're so often forgotten. I think it was really great that we had that day, but then we were able to actually expand our reach throughout the programming. And part of that was the way that the UAE internally set up its teams, which was actually really beneficial. So we were working very closely with our colleagues from ecosystems, from health, peace, and security, et cetera, and so inputting into the programming across the 2 weeks. And so hopefully that came out for those who were attending COP in Dubai last year or watching the sessions online. We really, really tried to make sure that water was really present every single day in some form or fashion. And for some days that was harder than others. The agenda was so packed, as they all tend to be. But, our team worked really, really hard on that, on the 3 kind of lead initiatives that Shaima mentioned that we're going to be talking about now, but also on the other topics as well. And I think some of those, like transboundary potentially, will be brought forward a little bit more at COP29 this year. Ecosystems, I think, will still play very heavily, but also energy. We had the first ever water and energy systems, like high-level event at COP28 last year. And I think that's a direction, kind of the energy and mitigation and water nexus, that we're going to see a little bit more. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. As we move forward, I hope, because I think it's another really big area that we need to be talking more about. But yeah.
And let's not forget the GGA, right?
Oh, yeah. So that was the next place I was going to go. Thank you. So we're talking about the presidency agenda. But then, of course, COP isn't just about the presidency agenda. It's actually about the negotiations. It's actually about what the parties are coming together to do to tackle climate change. And so there was the large outcome, which was called the UAE consensus. And so water and freshwater ecosystems are featured in there, which is great. So we're continuing on the progress that was made at COP27. But also most critically, we got a decision on the global goal on adaptation, which is called the UAE Framework on Global Climate Resilience, which is a mouthful. But in it, one of the first thematic priorities is water. And so that's fantastic, and that gives us a mandate to move forward as the parties are now deciding how are we actually going to measure, verify, monitor, and track progress related to those indicators. But I also want to say on that one, continuing on the theme of mainstreaming, yes, water and freshwater ecosystems is listed as a theme there, but it's also integral to a lot of the other themes that are there as well. And so hopefully as the parties are moving forward and working on the indicators, that's going to come out again. But that's a 2-year process, so we won't see a result at COP29, but we will at COP30.
Wonderful. Thanks for that overview, Ingrid. Now we're going to shift to Christine to talk a little bit more specifically about the Freshwater Challenge, which is one of the initiatives. What can you say has been the progress since COP28? Were there any obstacles that you've encountered, and how have you dealt with those, and how do you see that moving forward?
Thanks. Yeah, well, we were really lucky at COP28. At the invitation of the presidency, we had a sign-up of 44 countries, building on the original 6 countries that initiated this at the UN Water Conference. So the Freshwater Challenge is also part of the Water Action Agenda. And, this is where our focus is, on really accelerating action around freshwater ecosystems, their restoration and their protection as part of our adaptation to the climate crisis. And, all of us working in water know that too often water itself is left out of some of the really important conversations about the climate crisis. But beyond that, the ecosystems that provide us with water are too often left out as well. And, one of the things that we're often talking about amongst the supporting partners, and particularly in WWF, is, water doesn't come from a tap. Water comes from nature, and the basis on which we are currently relying on freshwater ecosystems to provide us with water is so dramatically degraded and so compromised that we really need to focus on this for the climate crisis as well. So we've had great progress with the Freshwater Challenge. We now have 46 countries who are members, and the EU has also joined. But we're not about kind of growing a massive membership. What we really want to see is the action on the ground. And during the course of this year, we had our first country meeting for the country contact points that have been nominated by government. So we came face to face, met up in Switzerland, in Gland, and really started the conversation about what do we need to do to overcome these barriers and make sure that rivers and wetlands start appearing in NDCs, in national adaptation plans, and that we are joining the dots between our national biodiversity strategic action plans, our climate plans, and our water resilience plans as well at the national level. So we want to see rivers and wetlands featuring prominently as one of the most strategic allies in our fight against the climate crisis. And a big part of the progress we've made this year is understanding where are the knowledge gaps, where are the data gaps, where are there gaps in approaches, and how can countries support each other with the peer-to-peer learning that's going to be very necessary to outpace the climate disaster and make sure that we're restoring ecosystems fast enough for them to continue to deliver us with water security.
Wonderful, thanks. So we see the importance of nature, but of course we also see the importance of cities and urban areas. And so I would ask a similar question then to Helen. What's been the progress so far? What obstacles have you encountered? And what do you need to make this a successful initiative?
Thanks, Dani. And I think in terms of progress, similar to the rest, and I think Ingrid began by giving the context. And for the people in the room, I think cities matter. And this was a conversation we had with the COP28 Presidency last year. And we're really excited when they began to acknowledge that, because by 2050, more than half of the global population will be in cities. So when we have the water discussion, we then must consider cities and the elements of urban water resilience. So really critical. And that was the framing behind a lot of engagement with a lot of partners globally that then enabled us to land at COP28. We had the first ministerial roundtable or high-level roundtable that brought together ministers and mayors from across the world to discuss urban water resilience. We had excellent global representation from COP30, where this will head next year. So we had Brazil, Colombia, we had Africa represented, we had South Africa, Nigeria, Rwanda. We even had Europe in the room, so we were really excited about that global diversity of the voices that were discussing the urban water resilience issue. Of course, some of the barriers have been, funding for this particular initiative, and that's why we are really excited to hear that COP29 is in the room, and are hoping that Azerbaijan can take up this initiative to be our champion. And I think also one of the big needs would be to have Azerbaijan support us to be able to have national champions, because when the COP presidency is driving something that we saw last year, it becomes a very strong uniting tool to bring a lot of momentum around something that the non-state actors already have said is a big priority. And so that would be something that we hope in subsequent discussions we could have. And of course, some of the things that we're looking at right now is really interested to hear about the ongoing initiatives like the Baku Water and Climate Dialogues. How can that feature in urban water resilience? There's the MAP, the multisectoral partnerships initiative for cities, because we know that the urban water resilience piece, it straddles between SDG 11 on human settlements and SDG 6 on water. So again, how does that conversation straddle between the two initiatives that are being fronted by Azerbaijan? So I think really from a broad framework, that's where we are. What have been barriers, but I think a lot of excitement and commitment to ensure that we have progress towards COP29 on the Urban Water Resilience Initiative. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Ingrid to tell us a little bit more about the food initiative. We weren't able to have a representative from the partners here today with us, although there is someone online, I believe, watching. But if you could, yes, it's God. But if you could, if you have any insight about how this is moving forward, please share.
Yes, and before I do that, one of the things also that I would just say about kind of all of these initiatives and kind of the process of when we were looking at what would be kind of the key themes for COP28 last year was where we saw there is a lot of action already happening on the ground and just wanting to be able to platform it in a way as well. And Shaima mentioned that as too, that they weren't trying to start a lot of new things. So, and so similarly with water resilient food systems, this was actually the one that we had identified very first as something that needed attention, because for those of you who are at the UN 2023 Water Conference, you might have noticed there were not a lot of food participants or organizations there. And similarly, I don't know if any of you were at the Food Systems Summit that had happened previously, but similarly, the voice of water was really not very well represented. And we know that these are obviously very interdependent systems. And so we wanted to make sure to try and correct that at COP28. I would say we made progress, but we're not there yet. And I think we need to keep pushing on this issue. There are a number of partners who are doing really, really good work on water resilient food systems. Folks like FAO, folks like the Global Resilience Partnership, folks like EMI, EFAD, and others, and probably many of you in the room are working on the integration of water and food systems. And so we really need more people to get involved in this. Right now, the initiative is with the Climate Resilient Food Systems Alliance, the CRFS Alliance, which is housed within the UNFCCC. And it was important for us for it to have a home going forward within the UNFCCC. One of the challenges is that the UNFCCC itself has a big funding gap right now, so they're not really able to staff it particularly well. However, despite those challenges, our group of participants from COP28 had a first meeting earlier this year in Rome to kind of talk about the agenda going forward. They have put together a short piece on, background piece on what is meant by water resilient food systems, and they are planning some events with the Resilience Hub coming up this fall. So there's going to be a virtual Resilience Hub, series of resilience hubs in October for different regions. So for Latin America, for Asia and the Pacific and Africa as well. And so we're planning a few different meetings to be taking place there. And then we will do kind of a flagship event at COP29 through the Resilience Hub and potentially through the Climate Champions team as well. So we're looking at different opportunities about ways to kind of bring this forward within the UNFCCC. But I would say we still have to identify additional champions and in particular identify specific countries who are interested and willing to take this forward within the context of the Paris Agreement. So a lot going on, but definitely a lot more to do.
Wonderful. We are going to open up to the floor for questions for the panelists, but just what occurs to me in particular is how do we actually get nature to talk to cities, to talk to food, and also at multiple levels so that the global works with the national, works with the local? That's a really, really huge and hard question, so I'm not going to actually ask. But if you want to integrate some of that into your thinking as we open up the floor for other questions, we'll take 3 or 4 questions from the floor and then go back to the panelists, and we'll do this for about 20 minutes or so. As long as you have questions, we'll try. Are there anyone would like to, or if no one has any questions, everything's super clear, then you can think about the other question I asked.
Thank you very much for hosting this session. I have a question for Christine on the Freshwater Challenge, just to understand how a successful year would look like and how a successful end of the year, especially in Baku, for all of us would look like from the Freshwater Challenge perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Yeah, I mean, as I said, we're not looking to try and, notch up the numbers on members. It's more about getting the action happening on the ground. And in fact, part of the progress that we had during this year was that the USA is a member of the Freshwater Challenge, and they launched the America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge, which now has 150 members nationally, and they have set their targets for rivers and wetlands that they want to see restored by 2030. So on the road towards achieving that, I think within the next year, we would like to see more resources being mobilized towards freshwater ecosystem restoration, and that is a key barrier at the moment, more so than the technical assistance that's also required or scientific understanding, is about how do we start using money that's available for water infrastructure, for green infrastructure, for climate resilience, and for adaptation, and make sure that we're achieving the multiple benefits that can be delivered through river, wetland, lake, and aquifer recharge zone restoration. Because we think that these are really, really critical in terms of adaptation to the climate crisis. So, to get there, we want to start demonstrating that this is possible. We want to start seeing rivers and wetlands prioritized across the Rio trio. So we're looking forward to Cali as well. And we want to start seeing that the MB SAPs that are coming in prior to that are featuring rivers and wetlands really prominently, not just for the biodiversity value that they give, but speaking to the value for food systems, particularly inland fisheries and the protein dependencies of many tropical countries in particular, and the adaptation resilience that they bring as well. So we need to start seeing these many facets of the different benefits being clearly articulated, the costs of restoration and protection understood better, and the willingness to meet those costs and start internalizing some of those costs into broader economic planning as well. Really, really critical. Part of the kind of route to get there is that, whilst our governments are so enthusiastic and that the countries who've joined are really, this is a country-led initiative, they're really leading the way with this whole process. But we had our first meeting yesterday about engaging the private sector. So we had a really encouraging workshop packed to the gills with 80 participants from across the private sector, looking at how did they start getting involved now? How do we start lining up water stewardship activities through the CEO water mandate and 100 basins? How do we make sure that we are joining the dots here and making sure that something nationally strategic comes out of all of these different efforts? And I think that as we start drawing that into the national scale planning with the countries who are already members, that will be a real success for us. But most definitely we need to have a clearer framework for the technical assistance that's still required, and we need to resource that because without resourcing, we're not going to make progress.
Yeah, wonderful. I'd like to okay. I was going to ask Helen a similar question. What does success look like at COP29 or COP30, going forward?
Yeah, I think Christine put it really well. And I think for us, it would be quite similar. Of course, this year, we're just working together. We are hoping to get consensus, ideally, on an outcome or something that we could rally together. We do know that realistically, in time for COP29, this might be completely agreed key messaging. So this could be like 3 key messages that we are hoping will cut across days that are discussing water, days that are discussing cities, initiatives that are discussing discussing water cities. So we're being very realistic about what we think we can achieve. We believe that in the next 2 months to COP, if we work really closely with the support of the COP29 Presidency, that then we could also be able to have the national champions, because we did have already last year countries coming together and supporting this, but it wasn't like something written down, but through the participation within the roundtable that we had last year, then there we think there's a lot of potential. Of course, there is ongoing initiatives that are legacy initiatives that came out of COP28 as well. So the CHAMP initiative that looks at the subnational governments as well and their placing, so beginning to be embedded there, but just actively within the different geographies, pushing to ensure that we have, urban water resilience feature in some way, sense or form. We know this is the year of the NDCs. And so again, if there could be efforts driven there, then we think that would be the ideal success. Yeah.
Super. Ingrid, same question.
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks, Maren, for the question. But more broadly speaking, for me, success is some additional or continuity basically between every kind of COP year. So it doesn't really matter who it matters who the president is. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but in terms of our messaging, our ability to influence the process, both kind of on the action agenda side, but also on the actual formal negotiation side, that kind of is maintained. And that's something, Shaima mentioned, like there's been this drumbeat of momentum, and we kind of, it feels like at UAE we really arrived, right, because we were everywhere, but making sure that, it's not just the number of events, it's not the number of initiatives necessarily, it is actually having kind of a consistent influence on the process. And also, and where we will see that next, I think, is the NDCs. And the NAPs, so the next round of NDCs are due in 2025. And so we will be able to grade ourselves a little bit, I think, on how we've done in terms of influencing the parties who are, the ultimate stakeholders at a COP, and influencing them to adjust how they're thinking about their mitigation and adaptation strategies. So I think it'll be a really exciting couple of years in terms of kind of seeing how all of this progress that we've been doing collectively manifests in those policies and plans. And so my hope is that we can continue to build on that through the presidencies, through potentially some inter-COP processes that could be set up to help kind of, again, Sherpa this huge group of supporters and experts to help support the parties in adapting and mitigating, to climate change. So that would be my thought.
And then after that, there's implementation.
Yes, well, it's already implementation, right? Because we're implementing the first round. So, I think, and that's really, again, where the solution side of things will be, and that's where the Freshwater Challenge can support, and that's where all of the good initiatives under the urban water resilience will be, and same for food systems. Even just for next COP, food and water are put together again. So again, there will be, momentum to keep these conversations going. So
Super. So I'm going to turn back to the floor, take a few more questions.
Yes, of course. My name is Lisa Hartog. I'm from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management for the Netherlands. Many people here are familiar faces. Good to see you. Really important, Ingrid, the line between all the COPs and making progress on moving the topic of water into the negotiation space. Always a challenge. I have two questions. One, you mentioned we need supporters and actors for that process. Who, in your opinion, can be those supporters and actors? Second, what do you see in that space as reachable for COP29 in Azerbaijan and next year in Brazil? Thank you very much.
Are you asking that to all three or to
particularly
Ingrid?
in Ingrid, because she talked about the topic, but if Helen and Christine have an opinion too, feel free to share, because we're in this path together. Thank you.
We're definitely in this path together. Lisa, just to clarify, you were asking who can support in the political process, helping us with the political process? Is that?
Sorry. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you.
To
get an idea, who in the room can play that part and can play that role? I know it, but I think it's really important that we all feel connected and responsible.
Yeah.
For we have to do it together to get that progress, because the world is on fire.
Yes.
And water is very important in that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, what helped us in the past, obviously, was the Netherlands, the government, and our colleagues here from Tajikistan were instrumental in that process. I think we do have to be working with the parties more, and we have to be talking to our own governments. We have to be trying to influence them in that way, because it is a political process. It's in COP language, it's a party-driven process. And so our voices as non-state actors are there to push the action agenda side of things, to showcase that things are happening, that are working. But the Freshwater Challenge also works with governments, right? And so it's through initiatives like that where, as you mentioned, the US has now set up its own America the Beautiful Freshwater Challenge. Other parties are going to follow, and then they will be able to bring that and showcase those things at COP and in other spaces and in their bilateral. I've been hearing them in bilateral conversations all week, people talking about these various different initiatives that are supporting the work that the parties are doing. So, I think it's really that interface between non-state actors and parties is really important. We have to respect the process, that it is a party-driven process. At the same time, we are the ultimate constituents of the parties, and so we can also push for things to change and things to be included. But if we're not there, if we're not talking about them, if we're not making our voices heard, then they won't hear that, and they won't know that it's important. So,
if I could just add, I think it's really important to be solutions-oriented, to sort of step in and say, we can help you do this better, right? We have lots of things that are going on in these different spaces that can be leveraged to make it easier to achieve your climate goals, for example, as well. So, did you want to respond also to those, to Lisa's?
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, a big part of it is demonstrating the art of the possible. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we really welcome the leadership in our members for the Freshwater Challenge and the countries that are leading on different aspects. For many countries, particularly those that are under-resourced, the thought of even just complying with the different conventions that they're already members of feels overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And in the face of the crisis, it feels doubly overwhelming. So really demonstrating that we already have the science, knowledge, and data that we need to make critical decisions in order to allocate resources to reap these benefits in time for adaptation is absolutely critical. And I think, from our perspective, from the supporting partners' perspective, demonstrating that is there, it's ready for action, mm-hmm. It's ready to be implemented, and that we really have an army out here that's ready to support action on adaptation. But we need that to be matched by the political will. And a conversation that we've been having a lot of during the course of this week is the scale of decision-making and the level of ambition of decision-making. We're still making too many decisions at a project-by-project basis, at a small catchment-by-catchment basis. We need to understand how our whole country is going to survive the droughts that are coming in the next 5 years, the mega droughts that are coming in the next 5 years, the floods that we've already seen starting to happen. And so we need to up the level of strategic decision-making, particularly, and really as a technical community, demonstrate that we have some of the answers here, and we're really ready to support and to give them.
Super. Did you have anything to add around the...
Yeah,
support?
quite similar to the rest. And I think every party has a role to play. And when I say party, I just mean people in the room. So from the government perspective, I think we've spoken about having the states, so to speak, they have such a big role because the political will is really a big driver of actual action, budgeting, implementation, and prioritization of a lot of things. But also the non-state actors have such a big role. And the challenge, and that's where, initiatives such as this, and I love Ingrid's perspective of ensuring that there is continuity, because the aim of initiatives such as this is to ensure that we are then, there's some sense of not even coordination really. It's just to ensure we know what's happening in the space to allow us to scale the ambition so that what we did in 2024 really can be scaled up in 2025. We begin to see the best-in-class solutions to showcase really innovative things, give space even to, communities, non-state actors that normally don't have space, allow other places to learn from others. So I think it's the answer to Lisa's question is everyone. Yeah. The roles are just different, but it's a role for everybody in the room.
And can I just give a little plug for the Water and Climate Pavilion as as a space? And one of the things, again, for those who maybe haven't engaged in a COP before or maybe are new to the process, the language, the terminology, it's very intimidating. But one of the things that the Water and Climate Pavilion has started doing and just had a session yesterday, is to help train folks from our community who are interested in getting more involved on specific topics within the COP process, because there are so many different work streams. There's different subsets of groups. There's the Adaptation Committee, there's Just Transition, there's the new quantified goal on climate finance. There's all these different groups that follow these different tracks, and it's really hard to learn about all of them. I don't recommend it, but you can learn something about what, if your organization is specifically working on the energy transition, you can learn a lot more about what is happening in the mitigation work program within the UNFCCC. And we have people who are training folks to learn about those processes, get involved so that you can come to COP prepared to follow those specific work streams and then report back. And it's a really cool process. And it's something we've talked about for a little while. We kind of started it at COP last year as a trial, and now it's really rolling out and moving forward. And that's thanks to CIWI, and that's thanks to the Water and Climate Pavilion partners who are really stepping in to kind of support folks to learn more about how to get involved in these processes, because that's where you meet and you talk to the parties, because they're the ones very involved. And if you have like 3 key points or 3 key things that you think is really important for them to raise in these work programs, those are things you can develop relationships with specific parties, bring it to them, and a lot of times they actually find it really helpful, because they're looking for solutions also that they can share and present. So that's just, sorry.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't do it myself, so I'm glad someone else did. Do we have any more questions from the floor over here? Dan.
Thank you very much. Dan Schuster-Beasley with the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office with the UK government. I guess it's a repeat of one of the earlier questions on what does success look like, but this is kind of on the negotiated outcomes rather than the action agenda. And so it's sort of to all the panels, what does that look like sort of as we move forward in the next few years? And the sort of part B of that question is, do we think that we as a water community have a clear idea of what that is, and is there more that we can do to come around with a very clear message for how we take that forward? Because if we all turn up with an opportunity to get into the negotiation room with water, do you think that we would have a harmonised message, or at the moment would it sort of just go off in all directions?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. And I think there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of harmonizing that ask, that key message, making sure that's really prominent, because I think there is a great diversity of views at the moment. And we see, even a lot of the climate conversation, the links to water still being very focused on mitigation. And some of the kind of water energy nexus discussions focusing on water requirements for renewable energy, and not, from my perspective, not getting to the crux of the issue, which is that water is to adaptation as carbon is to mitigation. Water is where it's at in terms of adaptation, and I don't think that we as a sector are getting that through strongly enough. And from the Freshwater Challenge perspective, obviously what we would like to second that with is the role that freshwater ecosystems and nature have to play, primarily in adaptation, but that they are then contributing to mitigation as well. And often we kind of get lost in the complexity of the reality behind the messaging, and particularly when we're dealing with complex ecological and hydrological systems, and predictions around those. But if we can get down to some really punchy headlines, that at least is a way to lead in to more of the negotiations, I would hope. So I would want to see more of the finance realized, more of the finance focused on adaptation, and more of that linked to nature-based solutions and freshwater ecosystem restoration as an adaptation measure, and that being mainstreamed in national strategies.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. And I think from our perspective, so excellent question, Dan. From our perspective for the urban water resilience piece, it is essentially the same in terms, and that's why when I started framing initially, I said our focus first is to have consistent key messaging, because we think there's a lot of things happening, really great things, all contributing, but there's a strong need to coalesce around 1, 2, 3, key messages about urban water resilience that, if consistently repeated, then begin to be mainstreamed within, whether it's within COP text, I know that feels like a long way off, whether it'll be within the NDCs and the NAPs, whether it even is in, multiple plans that are happening within the ecosystem. But also the other thing for us is we don't see COP as an end to itself, and we see that they are, we seek to influence different points. For instance, if there's, let's say, I'm using different examples, the African Urban Forum, there's a declaration coming out there. How do we influence there? If there's the World Urban Forum, how do we influence there? So that we have incremental influencing to influence outcomes across the year, and having COP, of course, as a big focus, but ensuring that we don't miss out on the different milestones every year, but ensuring we have that key messaging as something we carry across. Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Dan. So in short, I don't think we have one quite common message yet. I think it's something we can continue to work on. I would just go back to kind of the overarching focus on, we still see the language is still really around kind of risks, and I would go above and say that water is a key enabler of resilience, and that's resilience writ large of both our ecosystems and energy systems. So I think it crosses the adaptation and mitigation divide. And I would just love to see language around that is more holistic around kind of that water's fundamental enabling role of building a climate resilient future at all scales, and connecting to the other agendas as well, but really hammering that broad message home, because otherwise we will get stuck in the weeds a little bit, I think, in terms of how we segment ourselves into like the different components of the water community. And that's where we come in with the solutions, but that doesn't necessarily need to be in like the political decision. So because we are such a wonderfully diverse and complex group with so many opinions and so much technical expertise, and we love getting really nerdy about stuff, and I do too, but in terms of kind of the political kind of cover type decisions, I think just recognizing that role, because then that can further enable things around whether or not we have like a specific work program on water. I mean, that's another question, maybe not, you know. So there could be conversations that come from there, but having that I think getting that kind of baseline recognition, I don't think we're there yet, and I think that's what I would like to see next. And then also that continuity piece of like, how can we build in an infrastructure that keeps this going in a organized and kind of sustained way, so that it's not on any single COP presidency necessarily, because that's kind of a rickety bridge to build on, you know, because like one COP president could be like, this is a really, really important thing for us, and so we're going to highlight it here, here, and here, and then the next COP president comes and says, we don't really care so much about water. I mean, why would they say that? But it could happen, you know? And so we want to have something institutionalized within the scaffolding of the UNFCCC to say, actually, there's a mandate to keep this on the agenda. Yeah. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I'm going to push you a little bit on that. Yeah. Because if you have the language, it has to be oriented because you know what you want in terms of a mechanism, right? And you know what you're pushing towards, right? So language is great. Yeah. And like you said, I don't know that we actually know what a mechanism, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, I mean, not voluntary or within another formal process, what that would look like. And I think we do need to have more important conversations about that integrate all of these aspects. If we look back to, for example, COP26, there was a voluntary forests declaration, right? And that garnered a whole lot of enthusiasm, but we're not really hearing much about it now. So that would be the worst thing that could happen, is you have a spark that ignites something, but it's a flash fire, and then it burns out.
Exactly. So that to me is, we need to know what that end goal is first before we're pushing for
the language, right?
Before a resolution or something like that. Right. But I think we can still have language within it. But yes, everybody wants a declaration. I want a declaration, but I think we need to, I'm not sure we're 100% there yet on what it would be, unless it is something along the lines of these kind of inter-COP mechanisms around how do we facilitate, make sure that like there is thematic focus on water via some sort of process, and people are working on that. But
yep. Okay, great question, Dan. Thanks. Are there any more questions from the floor? Oh, Salma.
Hello. Good to see everyone. But I just had a quick question that ties to your question, Dani, when you said this very big, broad question, how to make people, nature people, talk to cities people, talk to food people, and all this bigger question. And I know that this session is about from COP to COP, but my question now, how to ensure this harmonizing of messaging across the different global water processes. So it's not just COP to COP, but COP to CBD COP to CCD COP, and we have the UN Water Conference that obviously the UAE and Senegal are excited to be co-hosting and taking over from the Netherlands and Tajikistan. But so just generally, how can we, I know we're trying to harmonize the messaging across the water climate community, but also we need to do that across the other communities so that we can get this continuity that Ingrid has been talking about, the consistency in the messaging, and making sure that you kind of reshape the way the whole international community think about water, and that it's not fragmented as people keep telling us it is. And we've seen that, of course, so many times.
Thanks for elevating that conversation. And this is going to be our last question, so make your answers
Lisa
excellent.
wanted to say something very quickly.
Oh. Yeah, and perhaps in relation to what can we start with in Azerbaijan, then, of the question of Salma. So what could be the first thing we can come together to in Azerbaijan on that language and on that cross-sectoral approach? Thank you.
Well, I'm going to let Helen and Christine come in, because I know they can talk about like the World Urban Forum and CBD, et cetera. But also we have Selma as the literal embodiment of the connectivity between the different processes. I hope you all know Selma Zaid, my colleague from COP28, who really was the driving force between a lot of the water agenda at COP28, and it's really great to work with her on that. And now she is still working with the UAE on 2026. So literally bringing all of her knowledge, all of her engagement with you all forward from one process to another. So obviously she can't be in all of the processes. So we need a Helen and we need a Christine.
Yeah, thanks. And I know I must sound like a broken record. And I go back to the key messaging I had spoken about and ensuring that we, as a community, I again keep thinking beyond our water, beyond our COPs. I think, like I said, the strength in having that key messaging that's accepted, it allows us to engage across all the processes, whether they're urbanization processes, biodiversity, even if it's desertification, whatever it is, whatever COP process that's happening, and not just COPs, like I said, all the engagements that are happening, if we can be able to begin to have that common messaging, it then even becomes a catalyzing tool even to regionalize, I know we're thinking at global level, but if beginning to translate, if we do this really well, then we can have those key messages being adopted within the regions and being regionalized in the different processes and engagements that happen there. So I think it's about being consistent in a common voice. And even if we don't make it, for instance, like Ingrid said, into a text. It's taken how many years to have water within, that formal text, right? That's not fully, it's not the only thing that matters. I think it's to ensure that across all things that are happening, we have that key thing, the bare minimum, not bare minimum, I would say the non-negotiables, within the different sectors that we operate in that are really critical to drive things ahead. I think I'll leave Christine to do the last one.
The last word, over to you.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, thanks, Selma. It is a good question. And from the Freshwater Challenge perspective, I guess we're engaging with all of the COP processes and not just biodiversity and climate and desertification, but also looking ahead to the Ramsar COP next year as well. And with each of those, we would want to bring the alternative bias. So to CBD, we want to talk about the importance of freshwater ecosystems for climate adaptation. At UNFCCC, we want to talk about, potentially the importance of freshwater ecosystems and flows for adaptation, but the biodiversity needs linked to that. And at the desertification COP, then we want to talk about the importance of wetlands and groundwater recharge areas in terms of combating drought and stopping land degradation. And equally then at Ramsar, how important are our wetlands and peatlands for climate mitigation and keeping all of that carbon locked up in them. And that's a huge motivation for looking after our wetlands. So if we can bring the sort of outside view and keep that thread flowing through the different COPs, that's something that we want to work really hard with the country members to do. And I think, as we focus, obviously this is a discussion about COP28 and COP29, and, with our overall ambition towards building resilience together, something that we talk about and we heard also from our corporate partners yesterday as well about saying that the road to resilience is a river. So let's restore and protect that river, because that's our way through the climate crisis. Thank you.
Wonderful. So if we can resume it in 3 words, it's 3 C's, right? We have communication, coordination, and consistency. So with that, we're going to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for your, and to the audience for your questions. I'd invite you to step down. Those of you who are with us at the high-level panel on Tuesday heard from the COP29 Presidency in a video presentation. And so we are very honored to have with us today representatives from Azerbaijan, Mr. Zur Ahmadov, who is extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador, I always have trouble saying that word, from the Republic of Azerbaijan on behalf of the COP29 Presidency. So we're very excited to hear from you about the COP29 initiatives. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, esteemed guests, let me first start by thanking the co-organizers of this timely side event, COE and the COP28 Presidency. I would like also to express my appreciation for our panelists for their insightful presentations. I'm sure that the colleagues in Baku who are in charge of the preparation of COP29, who are joining us via online platform in Baku, have taken due note of all the remarks of the presentations of our panelists, but also of the intervention of our distinguished colleague from OAE. And I think that all these remarks will be very useful in shaping our action agenda in the run-up to and during COP29 in Baku, but and also other way around. From the very preliminary reactions that I got via WhatsApp from my colleagues, their action are very much in line with what you have said here. So this is something very good for our joint work in the run-up to COP29 in Baku. Such a broad presence here today shows the central role of the water in the global climate agenda, and this is very good for our joint action for the period ahead of us. With just 73 days remaining until COP29, this is an opportune moment to reflect on the progress we have made and to consider the paths forward for water and climate action in Baku. Water is at the heart of our the climate change, and every aspect of the water cycle is profoundly affected by the climate change. In Azerbaijan, we have already started experiencing these impacts firsthand. Each year, we witness the shrinking levels of the Caspian Sea, which has become an integral part of our national identity, alongside the degradation of biodiversity and increasing threats to water scarcity for our population. Water's prominence on the climate platform has steadily increased since COP26, where the first Water for Climate Pavilion was set up, bridging the gap between water and climate agendas. COP27 marked another historic milestone for its cover decision formally recognizing the critical role of the freshwater in the climate action. At COP28, water was further elevated with the global stocktake, recognizing the vital importance of water systems and water-related ecosystems. OAE framework for global climate resilience as the culmination of the Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh work program on the global goal on adaptation highlighted the urgent need to mainstream water-wise policies across adaptation measures. We commend the leadership of the previous co-presidencies for ensuring that water issues are at the forefront in the climate dialogue. The COP29 presidency will build upon this legacy. As announced by the COP29 president-designate during the high-level segment earlier this week, water will feature prominently in the COP29 action agenda with our commitment to strengthen water representation at COPs going forward. We are fully committed to ensuring that the progress we have seen today is not just maintained, but accelerated. Looking ahead to COP29, we will work to strengthen continuity in the water and climate nexus dialogue at COPs, ensuring that the momentum is not only sustained but also amplified further. As we enhance ambition and enable action at COP29, our water initiative emphasizes water as both an essential natural resource and a vital habitat for biodiversity. We plan to enhance partnerships to protect water resources and related biodiversity in the water basins most vulnerable to climate change, and we aim to address the pressing knowledge gap around water-related climate scenarios. As we prepare for COP29, it's clear that this journey will require collaboration. The challenges we face, from water scarcity to ecosystem degradation, require urgent and coordinated action, and this is exactly where collective action is essential. Governments, private sector actors, civil society, local communities, and academia all have a role to play, and we intend to use the convening power of COP to harness our collective efforts. In the coming weeks, the COP29 presidency will share more details about the water initiative, and we are asking all stakeholders to step forward, engage, and contribute. I can add that In early September, President-designate will share his second letter to the public, and in this letter, there will be more information about the substance and modalities of the water initiative of the Azerbaijan chairmanship of COP. Azerbaijan's COP29 presidency is committed to building on the achievement of the previous COPs and driving systemic change to secure a water-resilient future. Everyone in this room, as well as others attending Stockholm World Water Week, share deep passion for water, which demonstrates our collective commitment. On behalf of the COP29 presidency, I invite you all to support COP29 Water Initiative and join us in enhancing ambition and enabling action for a water-inclusive climate action. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Ahmedov. And now I'm one of the things we took away from our workshop yesterday is about to be good advocates, we have to be good listeners. And right now, we would like to listen to the Azerbaijan State Water Resources Agency to understand what's important to Azerbaijan in this discussion. So with that, I'm going to invite Mir Movsum Dadashev, who is the Managing Director of Amelioration Science Research Institute for the Azerbaijan State Water Resources Agency. Please share your presentation with us.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to address the pressing water challenges that Azerbaijan faces and to share our ongoing initiatives and strategies aimed at resolving these issues. But first of all, let me thank CIWI and organizers for this fruitful event. We've been cooperating with CIWI since Baku Water Week, which was organized this year in March. So during these 5 months, we've had very productive discussions, and we wish to collaborate further and always ready for cooperation. So thank you very much. So first of all, briefly regarding I would like to give a brief information about our organization. So Azerbaijan State Water Resources Agency is at the same time the managing body of the government regarding the water resources or the whole infrastructure. The management of that infrastructure is being carried out by the state agency, and additionally the services on the infrastructure, and of course from the commercial perspective, the delivery of water to the end user is also subsidized by the government and is conducted through our agency. So we're more on the practical side of things, but for us it's also important to contribute because we directly witness the climate change, its effects on the water systems and networks which we have. So first of all, I would like to start with the global water challenges and what is our position on that. So at COP28, the Azerbaijan State Water Resources Agency highlighted critical issues such as global climate change, local and regional challenges, integrated water management, transboundary rivers, and the importance of alternative water resources, specifically emphasizing desalination. Water scarcity is a global issue that impacts many countries. For instance, regions like Middle East and North Africa face severe water shortages due to their arid climates and limited freshwater sources. Similarly, countries like India and Pakistan contend with water stress exacerbated by population growth and pollution. Azerbaijan, with its unique set of challenges, is no exception. The country has an annual per capita water availability of 3,253 cubic meters per year, but this drops significantly to 1,051 cubic meters a year when excluding transboundary water sources. The forecast by the World Resources Institute suggests that by 2025, Azerbaijan will face one of the lowest levels of local water resources per capita. The US Central Intelligence Agency reports that Azerbaijan is among the 39 countries most affected by climate change, with forecasts predicting a 2/3% 3 degrees Celsius rise in temperature and a 15% decrease in both surface and groundwater over the next 50 years. So in response to these challenges, Azerbaijan has prioritized a comprehensive approach to water management. This involves improving improving water use efficiency, expanding alternative water sources, and integrating modern technologies. For example, our pilot desalination project, which is being conducted in Absheron Peninsula, including Baku, the capital city, is a key initiative aimed at addressing domestic water supply issues by utilizing seawater to produce fresh water. This project opens new opportunities to the use of non-traditional water sources and serves as a significant example for improving the region's water supply. These types of projects also make a great contribution to the efficient use of Azerbaijan water resources and environmental protection. We believe that such innovative projects will reduce our dependence on the transboundary water, ensure the country's sustainable development, and leave a better world for future generations. There's been different projects which we as an agency engage in to kind of minimize the challenges which we're facing internally. So we engage in several projects to address the issues to the public as well. So I will go through some of the main ones. So we had this One Drop project called One Drop, which is the initiative which aims to promote water conservation through a 3-stage campaign. The first stage focuses on educating the public about water resource and their movement, their logistics. The second stage emphasizes the value of water usage, and the third stage encourages saving water through practical measures. It is important for us to enhance education for the end users to engage in water preserving activities, because mainly the water loss, we always divide it into two parts, and there's also major losses we experience on the end user side. Of course, we have challenges with the outdated infrastructure, which we as an agency we're redeveloping and re-enhancing year by year, but there are also some percentage of losses which are on the user side, especially in irrigation, I would like to point out. And because of those losses, moving on to the second point, we have the non-revenue water is one of the critical issues, and it's among the problems not only in Azerbaijan but all around the world. And we're incorporating advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence in water management and the overall digitalization. What is essential for optimizing water use, of course, and reducing losses, particularly in regions sensitive to climate change. And finally, as I mentioned before, we're exploring the use of rainwater harvesting and different, besides desalination, different using the alternative water resources in different ways. As I said, rainwater harvesting, and other sources such as, for example, reuse of the sewage water, which was treated and then reused, for example, as for example, for the technical usage, for the irrigation of some specific crops. So these kind of projects are crucial for minimizing dependence on traditional water sources and enhancing water security. Due to, just giving another example regarding alternative water resources, we have, because of as I said, because of outdated infrastructure, which was mainly designed in 1970s, during the Soviet era, during those times, the irrigation network was mainly designed for the collective farming system. And after the Soviet Union crashed and countries became independent, the number of farmers started to grow significantly. And year by year, we have increasing number of farmers. And it's very challenging for us, as an agency, who manages the whole infrastructure, to adjust the system year to year to increasing number of farmers. But the same goes to drainage, collector drainage systems. And as I said, one of the alternative uses of, potential alternative uses of water, collector drainage water is also one of the aspects which we're researching from the science perspective, how we can collect that water. And it's not like it's a huge amount of water, to be honest, based on the amount of farmers which we have. And I'm sure that once you visit Baku for COP, you will get the more detailed information and the insights regarding our systems. But yes, this is also one of the ways to kind of clean that water from toxins and maybe send back for specific crops back for irrigation. So this kind of ways are very critical for us. Moving on, for international cooperation is pivotal in addressing global water challenges. The recent Baku Water Week event organized in March 2024, first of its kind, it created a significant platform for its purpose. It brought together experts, policymakers, and stakeholders to discuss innovative solutions for water management. This event facilitated valuable exchanges of ideas, showcased advanced technologies, and fostered new partnerships. Looking ahead of 2025, we anticipate that Baku Water Week will continue to be an important venue for addressing water-related issues. It provides an opportunity for dialogue on water security, technological advancements, and sustainable management practices. The success of this event underscores the importance of collaboration in developing effective solutions to water challenges. As we move forward, the Azerbaijan State Water Resources Agency will focus on following strategic areas. We will, firstly, enhancing water cooperation. We will continue to promote international cooperation and data sharing to improve transboundary water management and address water scarcity. Second, scaling innovative solutions. Building on the success of our pilot projects, we aim to expand the use of innovative technologies and alternative water sources across the country. And finally, public engagement and education. As I mentioned regarding the One Drop project, we will work to raise awareness about water conservation and engage communities in sustainable practices. In frame of COP29, the Azerbaijan State Water Resources Agency is expected to organize side events dedicated to water issues, water resources management, and global cooperation. These events will focus on enhancing water cooperation and promoting innovative solutions for sustainable water management. We call on all nations to join us in these efforts, recognizing that water is not merely a sector, but a human right and a connector essential for food, energy, ecosystems, and livelihoods. Integrated water resources management, especially at the transboundary level, is crucial for building shared climate resilience and achieving sustainable development goals. In conclusion, addressing water challenges requires a concerted effort from all sectors, from the government, as it was mentioned before, by the way, during the panel discussion. All sectors should be involved, the government, private industry, and of course the public. By leveraging our collective expertise and resources, we can develop sustainable solutions that ensure a secure water future for Azerbaijan and beyond. I'm grateful for your support and cooperation, and I'm hopeful that together we can strive forwards a future where water is managed efficiently and every water drop is valued and preserved. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Dadashev. You really gave us some insight about the challenges that you're facing. And I think everyone in this room would like to extend their support to help you in bringing water issues to COP29. You're surrounded by friends, and I would invite you to have some discussions about this after the session. Now we are going to move on to the last speaker. We have His Excellency Daler Juma, who is the Minister of Energy and Water Resources from the Republic of Tajikistan, with us today. And this will address Salma's question about how do you connect all of these things in the international space. Your Excellency.
Excellencies, colleagues, friends of water, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for really active participation today. I find the discussions of the panelists extremely insightful. Special thanks to the moderator. I really like the way how you conclude with 3 C's. I think these 3 C's will not only apply or to be relevant between the COPs, but I think it's the same true for any other subsequent events that we have been together as a global community doing, especially in the water sector, including the UN 2023 Water Conference and the one which we are looking forward in UAE in 2026, hosted by UAE and Senegal, and of course the UN Water Conference in 2028. I also thank Azerbaijan, the United Arab Emirates, and the Stockholm International Water Institute for organizing this important event. As we conclude this event, I would like to reiterate the critical role water plays in addressing the challenges posed by climate change. Water is not merely a life-sustaining resource, but also critical to our planet's health and well-being. The availability, quality, and management of the water are deeply linked to climate change, the most important challenge of our time. What is essential for mitigation carbon emissions through hydraulic power generations and over 98% of electricity in my country comes from the hydropower, agricultural practices, and ecosystem conservations. What is also crucial for adapting to the adverse impacts of climate change, such as extreme weather events, raising sea levels, and water scarcity. The growing recognition of water's significance in the climate agenda is a testament to our collective efforts. As an upstream nation and one of the most vulnerable countries to the impact of climate change, Tajikistan has been at the forefront of promoting water issues on the global stage. We have been working tirelessly to elevate the profile of water in the climate discourse and to advocate for integrated global approaches that support sustainable development. We have used the platforms of different global events, including the COPs in Glasgow, Sharm el-Sheikh, Dubai, the historic UN 2023 Water Conference, the Dushanbe Water Process, and many others to convey our messages to the world community about the role of water in climate agenda, not as part of the platform, but as part of the, not part of the problem, but as a part of the solution. We are pleased to see that the importance of water issues has been better understood year by year. Since COP27, water issues have been accepted as an important topic of the climate agenda, and I think we should continue to push that cause. The UAE, in partnership with Tajikistan and the Netherlands, championed the water agenda at COP28. The inclusion of the numerous water-related activities in the COP28 program further solidified the importance of water in climate discourse. We are thrilled to see that for the first time in the history of COPs, a high-level roundtable on water was held within the framework of the Climate Action Summit. The UN Water Conference in 2023, co-hosted by Tajikistan and the Netherlands, underscores the vital role of water in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The adaptations of the UN General Assembly resolutions on the development of a comprehensive strategy on water and sanitation and holding UN water conferences regularly is a significant step forward. As we look ahead to COP29, we are very pleased to know that our colleagues from Azerbaijan also attach great importance to water issues within the framework of COP29. I urge all parties to continue their active engagement and collaboration. Tajikistan remains committed to supporting the development of a successful water agenda at COP29. It is important to highlight that the upcoming International Year of Glaciers Preservation, Tajikistan plans to host a high-level event at the level of the head of the states and governments at COP29 to spotlight the urgent threat posed by the glacier melting. Let me tell you that Tajikistan is home to many magnificent glaciers covering the high peak of our towering mountains that dominate over 90% of our country's landmass. These glaciers sustain life and provide fresh water to hundreds of millions of people in Central Asia. Sadly, we are losing these ancient and life-sustaining glaciers as a result of the devastating impact of climate change. In fact, of the estimated 14,000 glaciers, more than 1,000 of them have already melted in the past few decades, and by 2050 we will lose much more of them. Given the fact that more than 60% of water in Central Asia flows from Tajikistan glaciers, the loss of these magnificent glaciers carries devastations for the entire region and beyond. The loss of our glaciers is a loss for life and for humanity, but we are pleased to see the global community coming together to take actions at COP29 and other upcoming water-related and climate-related international events. Thank you again for your participation. Let's remember that the actions we take here in the upcoming international water and climate events will leave a legacy of hope, cooperation, and humanity at the best for our future generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It was. We also want to thank you for your leadership in this space, this political leadership, which is so important. With that, I think we want to welcome all the, not welcome, but thank all of our speakers, all of our partners of the pavilion, and to the team, the support staff. Special shout out to Ivan and Manu and Maggie who are here today. We're really excited to continue these conversations, continue the momentum towards COP29 and beyond. And we would like to extend an invitation to those who are not part of the Water for Climate Pavilion to get in touch with us so we can talk about it. And I think it would be great to have a photo op here with the people that were part of the panel and the speakers if we could do that. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you soon.